Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad, here as always with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. And then joining us in his guest star appearance for this little section of things about The Last of Us is Kyle Diaz.
Maybe my final guest star appearance for a little while till we find something new to talk about. This is
Oh,
sad. It's
that's almost like a threat, a final guest star.
end of the miniseries.
End of the miniseries. So today we are talking about the last two episodes of The Last of Us Season 1. And I'm really excited to talk about this with both of you. I basically restrained myself from texting you a bunch of stuff, Stuart, while I was watching it. So excited to chat about it.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, a couple little news tidbits. And so some happy and some very sad. But very happy to see that Stephen Yeun was cast in the Marvel kind of Walking Dead, the MCU universe thing.
Marvel Walking Dead.
Well, no, I'm just like,
He's going to be a big bad, I think, for the Thunderbolts movie was the gist of the article I saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, maybe not a big bad, but I think, yeah, he's going to be the guy that this was all speculative, but that's the spec out there on the streets. But he would make a great bad guy, of course.
He's joining at a time that the shine has unfortunately come off the Marvel apple a bit.
That's very true. If this had been 5 years ago, this would be massive, and now it's.
Yeah.
But maybe James Gunn will revivify some of the comic book movie, desire again, and Marvel can benefit off of that.
And Marvel kind of needs like a hard reset, I think, because they kind of seems like they're just gotten a little bit too far up their own mythology. So
yeah, and so he's going to be playing Sentry, and I think that's the consensus. Although I don't think they've officially announced that, have they?
I don't think so.
All right, so there's just a lot of gossip about it.
Either
so
way,
anyway,
Stephen Yeun's going to be a superhero, and that's going to be cool.
I'm just happy to see him back, whether it's MCU or not.
Did you guys see Nope? Have we talked about this already?
Yes,
we did talk about it.
He is so good at Nope.
Yes, so
I just that role did not need to be that well done, and he just like blew the doors off the place.
Yeah, I just want him in more. I want him out there. So, so hopefully that will continue. And in very sad news, Lance Reddick passed away, which I am heartbroken by. I loved him in Fringe. I loved him in everything I've seen him, and we both, Stuart and I both thought he was one of the best parts of
the best. His multiplicity subplot.
Yes.
In Raccoons, what was that? Resident Evil, the
Evil,
Netflix show. Dude, he was phenomenal. He was doing stuff that I've never seen Lance Reddick even do. So it's not like he was slowing down as he approached 60. But totally tragic. I'm just
and so they say natural causes, though I had heard that he had apparently dropped out of some press that he had been doing for the new John Wick movie due to some health thing. So maybe, I don't know. So but regardless, just very, very sad. So I'm gonna watch some Lance Reddick stuff. I had been starting to rewatch Fringe, so maybe I'll just continue on that path.
Yeah, that's worth a rewatch. I'm also in like a rewatch mood. I don't know if it's because as this show comes to an end, I'm like, well, there's not a whole lot else out there that I want to really engage with. So I've been rewatching Battlestar Galactica, which is a real
ooh, that's a pretty good one.
But he's not in that, unfortunately, so I might have to switch gears.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys that when he showed up in anything, you're just like, hell yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Even if he was in it for 5 minutes.
No, he's amazing. He had that voice, those cheekbones, just like a commanding performance. I don't know. I loved seeing him and everything. I'm really just heartbroken about this. I'm so sad for his family. That's just 60 is super young.
Yeah. Celebrity deaths don't tend to bother me too much. Especially for, this is going to sound like really callous, but especially when people are really old. Every once in a while, some celebrity will die, and people be like, "Oh, I can't believe this person died," and it was died age 96, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, probably should have steeled yourself for this beforehand. But it's just so baffling that he could be taken so young. So yeah.
Yep. But anyway, but yeah, just watch some Lance Reddick stuff. and hopefully, I mean, I'm guessing the John Wick movie like will be pretty good because of his contribution to it. So
his wife is also asking for donations to this nonprofit
yep,
that serves women or like single mothers in Baltimore, and he's a Baltimore native, born and raised, which makes his turns on the wire even more kind of
yeah, and that's
heartwarming.
this is for it was the it's a organization for is it mothers in general or single moms? I'm
I'm
not.
not sure, but it's like Mom Care, I think, or Mom
Yeah,
Cares. It's one of the, I think it's the name. I'm kind of just coming off of the top of my head,
yeah. Well, we'll put
but
it in the show notes.
clearly it was a nonprofit that meant a lot to him.
Yes. Next up, another the spin-off, which why don't you talk about this, Stuart? Because I felt the same way. Because I didn't realize it either.
So this news apparently did drop a while ago. It's kind of like we look for zombie movie and zombie TV show news every time we do a podcast, and it often felt earlier this year that there wasn't a lot out there, and then sometimes something will just pop up, and it's like the
Oh, it's
new
been out here a while.
NJ.com is reporting on the name of the Rick and Michonne spinoff, and apparently this has been known or reported since January, so it just kind of did not get onto the radar. It's going to be called Walking Dead Summit, and it's filming in New Jersey, as did Dead Isle, which, I mean, it's probably not funny, right? AJ, like, things don't actually get to shoot in New York except for Law and Order. What gets to shoot in New York anymore? So is it surprising that Dead Isle and
Mm,
Summit are both shooting in New Jersey?
I mean, I would say with the size of the sets, and I mean, there's a lot of film shoots that happen in New York, but it's incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
So that, and also you have to spread out and shut down streets and get permits and things like that. So only like the really big productions have the money to usually do that. It's not like this wouldn't be a big production, but my guess is that the amount of space that they would need and
They
the
have a lot
time.
of locations listed in this article on NJ.com, talking about where Dead Isle shot. They don't really have a lot of. They have like a stadium where Summit is being shot apparently, but where the Lauren Cohan and Jeffrey Dean Morgan spinoff was shot was all over the state. It seems like there was like 14 different locations.
Hmm. Well, I mean, my guess is they'll use if they need sort of a specific New York background, they'll do that in minimum amounts. But
One of
yeah,
those locations in New Jersey. Oh God, I can't open the article again because I have to. You have to like subscribe or sign in. One of them is called like has a really macabre name, like Death Warmed Over Street or something along those lines.
nice.
It was funny. Okay. However, yeah, it's filming in New Jersey. So, and it's coming out in 2024. Long way to wait, and we'll probably get a lot more information, well, something anyway. Another interesting tidbit about that is that Denai Guerrera and Scott Gimple and Andrew Lincoln are all executive producing this one, which I think Norman Reedus is also an executive producer now. But
Hmm.
that just like that's the one of those hallmarks of a show that is entered like Grandpappy life stage, where all the stars are executive producing it.
It surprises me that they're going all in and spending quite so much money on a bunch of Walking Dead spin-offs, considering their existing Walking Dead spin-off has been so poorly received. Although maybe Fear of the Walking Dead, has made tons of money for them and
I think
is a financial success.
Kyle, I think it still has, but I think that some of what they're trying to do is maybe negate what happened with that. I
Yeah,
don't know, but I agree with you, but they also didn't have, the sort of I think what they would consider the anchors that they like the Fear of the Walking Dead, they brought in people, but it was a totally new cast without any anchors from the original cast. So maybe that's part of the difference.
it just feels like, after 11 seasons of The Walking Dead and 7 seasons of Fear the Walking Dead or something, like I have a really tough time imagining there's a bunch of enthusiasm for these shows out there. But I also would have said that about Game of Thrones, and then House of the Dragon was really good and got everyone in a good mood again. So,
That's a good point.
maybe
It's
they can
true.
recapture the fire. But Walking Dead has been shedding viewers for,
Yeah.
the second half of its existence, more or less. So
In my desire to rewatch stuff I've seen before, honestly, I would rewatch the first two seasons of Fear the Walking Dead quite happily. They're shorter, but those were fresh when I saw them. Those were
Yeah, we liked them
I remember
initially,
those
and then
quite fondly. Yeah.
But then they went off the rails, and we
It
kept
has, yeah, so long ago.
there kept being these things that kind of like happened that we were like, oh, maybe it'll make a turn, and it just kept turning for the worse. But yeah,
Yeah, they certainly have not course corrected since they brought in the new showrunners. So that, and then Scott Gimple was quite heavily involved in that. So that does kind of make me raise an eyebrow. Can they actually do a decent spinoff at this point? And by doubling down on existing characters, they don't really give themselves a lot of creative leeway. The most creative thing that they've done recently was last summer's anthology series, Tales of the Walking Dead, which was showrun by Channing Powell, and that was fantastic. They did have a lot of star power. I don't know if you saw any of that, Kyle. It was kind of each one was a bottle episode for the most part, except for one.
No, I didn't see those.
They were a lot of fun, and like a real taste of. But also AMC's been going through so much trouble lately. Like their finances have been all over the place. They've been like shutting stuff down left and right. So it is like, I feel like they feel like these are legacy projects that they have to do, or it's going to hurt their brand identity in some way, but they probably would rather not. It would be my, however, we will learn more about the quality of these spinoffs when they come out. Dead Isle, I think this summer or late spring. And the Daryl one, whenever the hell that comes out, I forget when. In cordyceps news, the CDC has been promoting, well, not promoting cordyceps, but saying, hey guys, chill, cordyceps is fine, don't worry about it. In the vein of their zombie blog that they had online since, I don't know, like 2008 or something ridiculous like that. They've been like, hey, The Last of Us has zombies. Let's write about that too. And so they have a little video on like you might have seen it if you look at CDC stuff on Instagram or Twitter. They have a video about how cordyceps might not be that bad for humans, but other fungal infections can be.
Yes, and weirdly, the ones that we're the most scared of aren't making an appearance in here. But cool. And then if you, in case you're really looking to, I don't know. This makes me uncomfortable, but Kyle, why don't you talk about this photo you found?
It's a photo I took at my local, fancy grocery store of a coffee brand called Wonderground's Brainchild, which advertised itself as having lion's mane and cordyceps mushrooms ground in with its coffee. I have not been keeping up on what health benefits grinding any kind of mushrooms is supposed to provide it, into your coffee, but these guys are completely rolling with it as far as I can tell. And I was trying to figure out whether, the Last of Us had been good or bad for this company's sales, and I wasn't really able to figure it out by Googling, but
can I read you some of their marketing copy for cordyceps on this one, Brainchild? Lion's mane helps you focus and gives you mental clarity. Is that a mushroom too? I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
Cordyceps is anti-inflammatory and helps your brain do all the things.
Anti-inflammatory. It's funny considering the show.
It will not make mushrooms grow out of your eyes and turn you into a clicker. One of the comments 5 days ago on an Instagram post of theirs is, "Are we voluntarily ingesting cordyceps now? This can't end well." Lol. And they're not engaging with the Last of Us stuff. They must have made that decision in their marketing department in January or whenever. They were like, "Oh God."
They're like, we are just a bizarro coffee company putting mushrooms into our coffee. We will not engage with the frivolity that is
The Last of Us.
What an opportunity! Like, if all they'd have to do is kind of like get in some snarky sort of jokes, like not our cordyceps, or I don't know, and they could have gotten a lot more eyeballs, you would think.
Right. And then, other people are gaining on it in a different way. So we saw this Atlas Obscura article about like cooking with cordyceps, and apparently there's a lot out there about this, including things that are like with clean eating. And I will admit to both of you, I don't want to ever do this. Like I don't want to eat cordyceps. I'm just gonna take a pass on this particular trend. But I guess some people are into it, so I'm not gonna yuck their yum. But no, thank you. Hard pass for me.
It is a particularly disgusting looking fungus.
Yes,
Like,
that's yeah, it's not something I'm into. So there's that. But anyway, um maybe we'll see a resurgence or a surgence, because I don't know if there was a really a trend of this, but cordyceps cuisine from now on.
I don't know. So cordyceps cuisine question mark TK. However, what we have today is to talk about 2 episodes of
Yep.
The Last of Us season 1, the last 2 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
which will be 8 and 9. It's kind of odd that they're ending on an odd number, but if you recall, they did combine 2 episodes into the first one. So they probably had envisioned 10, and then this is what we ended up with. 9 is When We Are in Need. 10 is entitled Look for the Light, or something like, yeah, Look for the Light. So wow, 9 and 10, or 8 and 9.
Yep.
They both do have cold opens this time around, I think. Or is this, I forget which. Definitely the last one has a cold open. This one opens with a man reading scripture in a steakhouse. But HA, this was, I knew that this was coming because I've played the game now. Kyle knew this was coming because he's played the game.
Mm-hmm.
What are your overall impressions of this episode, given the big plot,
Well,
beats?
not knowing, you mean both episodes or the first when
This
we are
first
in
one, episode 8, When We Are
um
in Need.
So, okay, I will say that, and this is just because I've watched so many different things. I had a feeling I knew where this was going, and it went exactly where I thought it would go.
Yeah, I
So,
guess, if you've seen The Road and you've seen season 4 of The Walking Dead, you do get a sense that this is something that writers really love to play with, and that is, cannibalism in the apocalypse.
yep.
Um, I will
And,
say that I think production wise, this I loved the way that they cast and made up this cast for this episode.
mm-hmm,
Like even in that first scene when you're like looking around at these faces being read revelations, everybody is quite gaunt,
mm-hmm.
and their skin is like damaged. And this has been a through line for this whole season of this show. I feel like is people look appropriately messed up, having been like living without creature comforts for 20 years. So I thought that was
Well,
great.
yeah, I thought it was great, and it's such a contrast from the community that Tommy is living in. So,
Oh,
I
totally. Yeah, where they're
thought,
making whiskey and bacon and everything's fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then and then if you see, what I liked about how they rolled out this episode was that it seemed relatively benign, and then just gets more and more sinister, and you can pick up these little like hints about it, like they're definitely there, and they're dark. So I liked how it was sort of, at first you think it's like, okay, this community's there, they've clearly been through a lot, but seems like they're gathering together in this like semi-religious community and like talking about faith, and like hopefully they'll get through. But then they keep revealing more and more details, and I thought it was very nice how they did it.
Yeah, and
And
props to Scott Shepherd, who plays David in this episode.
yeah,
oh
Who,
God.
if I
Yeah.
looked at his filmography, there's not a whole lot there. Like, I don't know that you would necessarily think this is the guy for this job, but he kills it.
he really does, and he perfectly walks that line, because he really does seem semi benign, or at least, and then it just like, and as more and more is revealed, you're really forced to think about who he was pre-apocalypse, or at least I was.
Yeah,
So we'll get to that, but
I mean, his classroom must have been interesting.
yeah, I was just like, why is that dude a teacher? I wonder.
Kyle,
So
what were your first impressions?
I really liked that they in a show that's so kind of episodic in a way. I really liked that it's directly linked to the events of the prior episode. So the um, reason the group comes together in that first scene is to mourn the death of the man that Joel killed when they were making their escape from the university. And of course, we know because we were there and we're on the side of our protagonists that they were essentially getting mugged by these guys, and probably gonna get taken back to be used as
well, yeah, I was about to say, were they
sustenance? Yeah,
I was like, they were clearly going to harvest them or
yeah.
something, right?
And a
But
horse
of
for sure.
course, to these guys, they're just like, they killed my dad, basically, which is a very human emotion that the girl has. And so that's kind of why they know what to look for in terms of, a man traveling with a young woman, and why they kind of set off to search for them, which I just liked the way that those kind of puzzle pieces fit together here. The guy who plays David is incredibly creepy, but one of the most creepy things about him is that he isn't necessarily all bad off the bat.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when
Right.
he meets Ellie, Ellie shoots a deer, and then essentially David and James, I think is the other guy's name. James is played by Troy Baker, who played Joel in The Last of Us, which is nice. And you're right, Stuart. He looks messed up. Like he looks gaunt.
Yep.
I mean, he's just Hollywood skinny, but then they make his cheeks redder, and
Exactly.
it takes it to a different place.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've kind of come to this deal where they'll swap some penicillin for a little bit of the deer, and Ellie has to wait with David, and they have this conversation, and you can feel Ellie, and I think even as the audience, we also kind of almost want to believe that this guy could be a good guy, and he's kind of making a pitch in a way that he's talking about extending some amount of mercy to them, and forgiveness, and a little bit about his life and how they like brought this stuff together. And there's just like a little bit of hope there that maybe he's not as bad as he seems, or as maybe
Well,
there's something kind here as well.
you mean in the first instance where he's sitting with her around the fire?
Yes, exactly.
Because later when she's in the cage, even though he's extending this semi hopeful message, it's kind of hard to believe what he says.
No, there the mask has fallen away. I'm thinking
Okay,
mostly about the
okay.
fire. Yeah, and so but it kind of sets the stage, because he isn't just a violent psychopath right off the bat. Like, this isn't a Kathleen situation where she's shooting the doctor in the first episode or something. He is a little bit charming, and you can kind of see how he became the leader of these folks, and you can also see that Ellie harbors just a little bit of hope that maybe she's found somebody who can be helpful and not a threat.
Well, I do like how the minute he starts talking about, how things happen for a reason and there's no luck, and then that really, like, her face, Bella Ramsey's face as she's listening to him, because she knows what happened and how Joel got hurt. And she knows what they were doing, and that it certainly wasn't like a benign interaction, that it wasn't accidental. And no, she's got to get out of there. Like, that was a great reveal. When he starts sharing that story with her, and her flight instinct is absolutely correct. So I really enjoyed that you're right, like Kyle had like a little bit of hope was extended, but then immediately it's like, nope, gotta get out of here, danger, Will Robinson.
If I have a criticism for this episode, it's that it could have done a thing that the game managed to do in the same scenario, which was, yes, David is charming at the fire, like that's parallel. But then they get attacked by infected, the two of them, while James is off getting the medicine at the village. And in the game, it's like wave after wave. It's an insane, like, you could not do this in this episode. However, David saves Ellie's life and vice versa multiple times over during this section of the game. And so on top of that, like, convincing rhetoric that he's been giving her, they also then have a moment of, or several moments of, literally saving each other's lives. And you trust David, but, well, in the environmental version of the storytelling, you kind of trust him because he's come in and like gotten a zombie off of you a bunch of times. I think, and Craig Mazin talked about like not feeling like it was necessary, but I honestly, I have a feeling that there just weren't enough zombies toward the end of the season. I would have liked one clicker to show up.
Yeah, I completely agree. We get one zombie in the final 2 episodes. It just seems like not enough.
Yeah, and I thought that that's where they were going, honestly. So I was very surprised that there wasn't something that happened in at least one of these episodes.
Well, they try to trick you too when she's hunting the deer, and what is actually antlers on tree branches. It sounds just like a clicker at first in the woods, and
Mhm.
you're focused in on Ellie, and she's like, but then they show you the deer quite quickly.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that could have helped because then you would be even more suckered in as an audience, and you would understand that Ellie could have been more suckered in, but of course she's resilient and a total badass, and even in the cage, that's what I love about this whole section is she's always kind of thinking ahead to what she can do next.
Yeah.
'Cause I will say that even like as they're dragging her out of the cage toward her potential demise, she bites not James, she bites David because that's actually strategic.
Yep.
Like if it had been James, who knows what David would have done if
David
she had
would have
said,
just killed James. Like
Yeah.
that's what he would have done. But
yeah,
she knows that he's such a like megalomaniac that he's
it
gonna
buys her
totally.
the time she needs,
Yep. I also I was a little bit worried that what they were gonna do here was that Joel was gonna come in riding on his white horse or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it and rescue her, and I was really glad that that's not what they did here. And it really just is. I thought that they did a great job of showing how savvy and smart and honestly street smart Ellie is, even if she is naive in other ways. Um, she very much had his number, no matter and I was just like, oh, like because I not having seen the game, I didn't know where any of this was going, but I was really like, oh, this is what's she gonna do to him? And I wasn't totally prepared for it, but it was a really great show of her survival skills. And I loved how she drew him in too, because he has no idea what he's dealing with.
He's finally
Um,
got someone who's on his level, which is what he's interested in, but he's
yeah,
not ready.
yep, correct.
Yeah.
So that was
Uh,
kind of cool.
there's also been a scene before they go hunt. Actually, yeah, no, it was before they go back out to find Joel. Before they kind of like roll up Ellie. They have a dinner scene where he slaps the Alex daughter and then helps her up and then says that he's her daddy. It's all super disturbing.
Just before he feeds her his daddy.
Exactly.
Or her daddy rather. And
Yeah,
gross.
and
And it's not just that, but it's like everybody's eating off these like they have all these like tiny portions, but he has this massive plate of human it's so
yeah,
gross.
that was pretty bad. There's also the most interesting delivery of the word venison just
Yeah,
before
yeah,
that.
totally. It's
So
venison.
one thing that I think was a little bit of a missed opportunity here, and bear with me as I say some things that are going to sound extremely disturbing.
Oh
It's a
God.
cannibalism episode, so go
Well,
for it, Kyle.
David is the leader of this group, and he is eventually revealed to be, despite his initial charm and mercy, he's later, revealed to be a megalomaniac, an abusive leader of his people, a cannibal, and indeed a pedophile, all wrapped up into one little bundle. So he's over the top in terms of his villainy. It's almost like how many more, could he be a Nazi as well? Like just throw that in there just so we can get a little bit of another, thing in there. And I think that one missed opportunity is that the show kind of doesn't have the opportunity to explore whether what he's doing with the cannibalism is justified. Like it is an uncomfortable truth that humans in extreme scenarios have frequently had to resort to cannibalism throughout history, and sometimes you could kind of see why. Like if these people are dead already, like it's, in the case of the father here, they didn't kill him specifically to eat him, and it would be a waste just to like stick him in a meat locker and, wait for the ground to thaw. So I I think there was a little bit of room here to explore whether or not what was happening here was, was a legitimate survival strategy, but it quickly just becomes overshadowed by just how over the top nuts this guy is. And so
I feel
I
like
just wish the show has gotten to dig into that a little more.
I feel like they kind of talk about this because there's the whole exchange between James and David about the fact that, some people thought they had seen deer, but that it may have been just something that they wanted to see. And David is very quick to say, well, maybe let's go out hunting and let's make sure it happens. So I do think that they try to show that it was justified. But I also don't think David is at all bothered by the fact that this is what they're doing to survive. And he says something like that to Ellie later, that we are all animals. And he kind of acts like, oh yeah, it's not something we want to do, but I don't get the sense that he is bothered at all by it. Hence the big plate of human food.
Yeah, no,
they do have
I don't
three
either.
bodies in their meat locker,
Right.
human bodies, right? But in that scene with him and James earlier, before they decided to go hunting, maybe it was code, which would be a reference to what he says to him later. How much do we have left? Venison, elk, whatever. And he's like, a week. But you don't see any elk in that meat locker
No,
when
but they do.
he's
I
in
mean,
there
he
later.
does. He wants the deer. They're very excited to get that. And then also, when the horse is shot, he has them drag it in, and we see it indeed in there. So I don't think that they are only. I don't think that they are cannibals by choice, I guess. But I also don't think that David is at all bothered by this when other people are. So
Another show that we've discussed on the podcast, Yellow Jackets, is based at least loosely on a real plane crash that took place in South America in I think the 70s, where a plane carrying a team of soccer players amongst other people crashed in
yeah, it's
the
the
Andes.
The movie Alive was
alive.
set on that.
Yep.
And I have not seen the film, but I have read about the incident because of Yellow Jackets. And um, they did have to resort to cannibalism, but did it, in a very reluctant and guilt-ridden way, and it really directly resulted in, almost half um, of the people who were on the plane surviving 4 months in, essentially whiteout conditions high in the mountains. So I did. There's just I want a little more nuance in my cannibalism stories. I guess that's my point. Like I just want to, to have a story that kind of makes the case that maybe this was something that saved people's lives. And David's got a little band of people there who have all survived a 20 odd plus years after the infection. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just a little nitpick.
You should watch that movie Alive because it's really well done. But this is just a total random fact, but Ethan Hawke, who starred in that movie, refused to grow a full beard. He'd only grow a goatee for that. So there's like, no matter how many months of like like everybody else looks like really ragged and whatever, but he still has his like little groomed goatee. So anyway, but I do think that they explore some of those within the film. And they, talk to the survivors after this happened, but they explore some of those nuances, like, and indeed, some of the people who refused to like partake in this died, because they just couldn't bring themselves to do it. So I do think that it's one of those things that, they can't get too far into it here because it's a 45-minute episode, but that would have been kind of interesting to have at least an exchange that was a little bit more open about this with the people in this community.
Yeah, it seems like the people in the community have kind of blinders on. There's kind of a willful ignorance or denial going on where they, are just accepting that these folks are really good at hunting all these deer and
they're
procuring more
so
venison
repressed too.
Yeah,
Like that's one of the
they're under his thumb.
that's
Without
one of the
question.
nice things about the background acting in this episode is everybody just looks like they all wait, I don't know, 5 minutes while they have full plates in front of them until he sits down and says grace. Like, can you imagine if he hadn't come back in with that deer? Would they just be sitting there all night until he shows up and then they can eat their food? It's pretty crazy. So Ellie, in the game, that horse, they named it Callus, I think. So I was very sad to see Callus die again. It was sad enough in the game. It's very sad the next time too. But the my God, the scene of like them going house to house
Yeah.
and Joel's rather miraculous recovery. It's all very similar to how it plays out in the game, and it's yeah, you get to see his enhanced interrogation techniques. It's very improbable that he could have gone from like barely conscious to managing to be stealthy enough and then stab that one guy in the neck. I'll give you that. But and then he kind of just gets up and he's fine. Remember last time we podcasted, I was wondering how quickly he would get back into
Mhm.
a murder machine as he does in the video game after being impaled on rebar, in this case by a broken baseball bat handle. But it's still very fast. I mean, penicillin's great and all, but I think it probably would have taken more than 2 days and 2 shots.
I don't know, Stuart. That's magic penicillin.
It's something that I kind of complained about a little bit back in the Jackson episode, and I'm gonna complain about a little bit in the next episode as well. But this show is really, really unwilling to let any time pass on screen. And it's weird. Like in Jackson, it's like they arrive the next morning, they leave. They spend like 11 hours in Jackson. And then here, like all that you need is a brief scene where, you know, David and James say, look, we've been doing this for a week. How much longer are we going to keep looking for these guys? And then you've completely solved this entire
Hmm.
problem, you know? Like I just don't understand why the show writes itself into these logistical little corners when all it needs to do is give itself a little bit more breathing room and it would make these scenes much more plausible. So you know, again, 72 hours on penicillin, Joel's going to be feeling a lot better. I don't really understand why they have to create this problem for themselves by stacking all of these events within the same like 4 hour period.
Yeah,
It's
I was thinking the same thing, Kyle. Like they could even have come up with some winter storm why they couldn't track them so that, you know.
Yeah,
But
something. I mean, there's a lot of houses, you know,
but
they're
I
going
guess
house to house.
part of it is that we need to know that Ellie doesn't think he's coming because she's doing the best she can, but she has to leave him in this like incredibly vulnerable situation because she's trying to save him. So I feel like that probably wouldn't have worked.
That's an excellent point. And
Yeah,
it
that is a
also
good point.
goes to the mythology of Joel as this like unbreakable person, which he is. Like we've talked about this on in the game, Kyle. He is just like he's made of oak, and it doesn't really matter what you do to him, he'll always kind of get up again. And so part of this improbable nature of the storytelling here goes to that. But also, as you said, Ellie needs to think she's on her own.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I also think you're correct, Kyle, though, because noted in other places where I think it could have been, especially when they're traveling together and things like that, like there could be just a moment where you know that time has passed because I do feel like there's a little bit of whiplash when you're trying to catch up with, oh wait, and trying to figure out how long has it been or where are they, how did they get here so quickly? So I think but in this particular case, I do think it was probably necessary as a plot point for Ellie.
I do think, and this is kind of a theme that we'll have across both of these episodes in terms of my feedback, that in the beginning of the show rightly and to its advantage stayed very close to elements of the game. And in some ways, I think these two episodes at the end are too loyal to the game. And it's to their detriment. And one of those is this kind of sense that Joel is like a late game, you know, protagonist. Like he's got his XP up really high, you know, he's got all his nice weapons. Like he's, you know, that kind of gathering strength is something that game players are very familiar with, where you get to the late game and you're like, oh, like I'm really good at the gameplay elements. I've got all my stuff. I've got like my high level, like I'm an unstoppable killing machine, and that's kind of what we're getting here with Joel. So
Hmm.
it's there's a couple of instances where I just think like I wish they'd chosen their own path the way that they did earlier in the season.
Yeah, could have been a very different. Yeah, I wonder at some point, like some of their decision making is based on the perceived backlash that they might get if they did, veer too far. It feels like that's part of their calculus, at least.
There's a very funny clip that I saw where it just um it has Joel in like black and white from episode, I guess it's probably episode 7, saying like to Tommy, like, I'm too old. I don't know if I can do it. Like, you gotta take her. And then like it just like there's this rock music and it just shows him like popping guys' kneecaps off and going on his rampage later where he's like, just mowing through everybody. And it's just like, how can these be the same character like one episode apart kind of thing?
We all have our bad days. So back in Silver Lake, Ellie's in jail and she's fighting back again, well, mentally and then physically, against David's attempts to get her to like join him in the dark side of the Force and rule the galaxy together, but also to be his child wife. And then she does the amazing thing of breaking his finger, which was, if it tricked H.A. Conrad into not knowing that was coming, then that's a pretty cool move.
I didn't know she was going to go for his fingers. I figured for his eyes or something, because I thought she was trying to distract him with the hand thing. So I knew she was going to do something kind of gruesome, but I just didn't know what it was going to be. I did not believe for a second that that she was falling for his sort of storytelling.
No,
because she's in a cage, so talking about ruling with somebody that you've put in a cage is probably not likely to happen. So but I did think he played this really well. He definitely comes across as a predator. He's absolutely trying to groom her, and I think that the way that they just portray him and how he interacts with the community, and you can feel the fear that the members of the community have of him. Every single member has a fear of him. It's nobody is like his friend. Even James is afraid of him and afraid of misstepping. So even that moment where he's saying to James, oh, it's not code, go and get it. Like James is definitely afraid of like, oh gosh, like, what am I going to do here if I do the wrong thing? And he's like, I was speaking in code, damn it. But from especially you see the most of it, I think, with the widow and her daughter, and his absolute power over this community, and they're, as you said before, Stuart, just completely repressed, and following along with him. So I thought that knowing all of that when he's going into the cage with Ellie, or outside of the cage with Ellie, was a pretty cool way to show it. So
we've already go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to move on, but if you're still on the
scene. No. I really, and I guess the only sort of comment I had was like, would they have just left Idir on the floor? Probably not. Was that out of the game?
Yeah, she realized that they were killing people. I think it was. Do you recall, Kyle?
I for some reason I seem to think that she saw him like actually chopping somebody up. I don't think it was an ear. I think, but it was revealed in a similar way.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's in a kitchen, and they have a cage in their kitchen, right? This is just what you do.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about the strategy that she employs here. They're coming in and grabbing her. James is in there first. She doesn't bite him. No, she waits till David goes in and she bites him, and then is able to quickly blurt out that she's infected. She pulls the Bob defense against the Terminus. So it is a trope that we are familiar with in the Walking Dead universe, with the cannibals and somebody saying like, "Oh, you're eating infected meat, tainted meat." So that gives her just enough time to pull a pretty cool move where she pulls a cleaver out of a table, which is not easy in itself, and turns it midair, flips it into Troy Baker's neck, James's neck, who then slumps against the wall. And then she runs off into the restaurant. And this enters a phase of the video game where I died, 20 times in this fight with David. It's a really tough fight in the game. They luckily cut it a little shorter for the show.
Yeah, I thought that this was done pretty well. Watching it again, having not played the game, I was like, oh, this has to be out of the game, in the way that the fire takes, hold, and you feel like there's like, it just feels like a game. Like there's ways that she's going to have to get out of there. What is does she has to, is it's the same? Like, does she have to kill David to
He
get out of there? Is that how it works, or is this something
basically,
different?
yeah, you're locked in there. You're locked in the restaurant with him, and you have to sneak around and try to stab him with basically,
Mhm.
yeah, with she has a steak knife in the show. I think you have either that or your pocket knife. But he can one shot you. Like if he sees you coming, he will chop you. And so I
Ah.
just poor Ellie, with my me controlling her, was chopped up so many times by
Oh,
David. Yeah, it was gross. Um, so yeah, it's the same sort of approach, except she does stab him in the show. Like great job, but it's not enough to set him down. That would put me out of a fight, getting stabbed right in the
yeah.
gut. Um, but both David and Joel show remarkable fortitude in these wounds that go through their stomach muscles, that are not debilitating, which having had hernia repair, and oh my god, that hurts so much. Like when there are holes in your stomach muscles, that moving your stomach, and like it's very painful. Okay, but so then she, you have this scene, this part of the scene where he's on top of her, and the real mask comes off, like no more veneer, and he's like, "Oh, don't you know the fighting is the part I like the best?" And he's moving into some other territory. When Ellie is able to grasp the handle of the cleaver and saves herself, but then
And
also kind of goes over into another realm of madness.
I think that it's been a while since I played this part of the game, but I'm pretty sure that his uh sadism and his attempted sexual assault of Ellie is more explicit here than it is in the game. Where the game just kind of hints at him being a pedophile, but I don't think he actually ever attempts to actually rape her or act on those
Well, there's
impulses.
a line though from Ellie after she gets out with Joel, and she says he was trying to. She doesn't say it either, but
It's
yeah,
implied.
Yeah,
it's more implied through the dialogue than through what Scott Shepard is doing
Well,
in the
and
scene
I
with Bella.
also, I again kind of knew where this was going, just having watched and watched all these kinds of films and things like that. I definitely got that kind of cult leader sense when he hits the girl
Mm-hmm.
in front of everybody, and you get the sense that her mother is like, also her mother just like leaves the table or leaves the area after that happens. Like she does not do anything to help her daughter. So you get the sense that he's doing this. And then it occurred to me after, things play out as I kind of thought they would, is that, you know, aside from the vengeance thing, maybe the reason the guys were going to kill Ellie was actually out of mercy, because they know that that's what he does. So that was something that occurred to me later. But they were also
That's
kind of pissed and trying to take out her and Joel anyway. But that was something that occurred to me after the fact, that they've seen how he acts and they're just like, all right, maybe we
that's a
don't want to
thought,
watch this
man.
kid go through this.
Yeah.
So
Um. So she manages to get out of the restaurant after destroying David, and Joel does the weird thing of coming up behind her just to to save her.
yep.
But then like says, a baby girl, calls her the same pet name that he used to call his daughter. The people on the internet were freaking out,
Mm-hmm.
and then they walk away into the snow. Um,
Where's
in the
the rest of the
game,
town
yeah,
though?
in the game, they're all dead because Joel has been killed, like murdering
Killing
his
them?
way through the town.
Okay.
Not all dead, but there's definitely like a bunch, a lot less of them than there were.
I mean the town is on fire, so that seems like it would distract some people.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, good point. There is a little more of that like environmental stuff going on though in the game, where you are aware that there are other people in the village, in the town, and that they're like going to a shelter, and some of them are outside in the streets.
I don't think we can leave this episode behind without talking about just how absolutely phenomenal Bella Ramsey was in it.
Yes.
Um, she needed to really sell a lot of different things, a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of indecisiveness, but then also this steely, kind of determination and ability to wreak vengeance when needed. And she just kind of nails all of them. It's really um she was just incredible in this episode. Anybody who had any doubts about her as Ellie looks really foolish.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't. I guess maybe I've stayed away from it, but I think she's been phenomenal. I don't. Has there been backlash about her?
There's always going to be some idiots out there, but yeah, like Rotten Tomatoes has still stayed critically very, very, very high. Some of the audience score has gone down, but mostly that's because of troll stuff. But when they do, if you do read some of those bad reviews, and I don't recommend it, they are often targeting the casting.
Huh. Well, I thought some of that was potentially because she identifies as non-binary, and that that was the people trying to pull it down because of that. But I don't know. But no, I thought this was her episode to me. Like, she's been great, but this was like just showing her acting chops. I thought she really did just a phenomenal job at really selling this. And you really believe that she is capable and that she would be able to escape. Like, I don't feel like there's there's a doubt about her survival skills in this. And I do think that she, like, every single, like, again, her it's not just how it's not just her dialogue. Like, her facial expressions are incredibly, like, transparent and revealing and really good and say so much. So even, when there isn't dialogue, she does just an amazing job at showing where she's at in this stage of the game.
Well, while
So
her survival capabilities are no longer in question, the damage done and the
yeah.
cost of her actions comes into focus in the next episode. Look for the light. But before we get to that section, there is a cold open introducing a woman running through the woods, very pregnant. You can hear a clicker or a runner probably screaming in the background. And she's just running, getting into a house. This woman is Ashley Johnson playing Anna. Ashley Johnson was the voice of Ellie. And you can see why she's not playing Ellie, because she's like 38 or something like
However,
that.
I will say that she and Bella Ramsey, you can believe that this would be Bella Ramsey's mother.
That's funny you say that. Holly, that was her first sentence when she had this on last night. She's like, "Oh yeah, I can see why they're cast." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Really? Okay."
No,
I
I
mean,
could totally
yeah.
see it. They have like some definite similarities. So I was like, oh, I get it. Totally. So, anyway, I thought she was really excellent in this piece.
Yeah,
Cameo.
it's not a long part, but there's a lot of work in it. Ashley Johnson was a guest on the HBO podcast and said that she was covered in bruises and the stunt woman had a black eye by the end of the scene. And I think they've also made some comments about how Ali Abbasi, who did direct this and the last episode, does a lot of takes. So I think they had to like roll around on the floor of that room for many times. So that, yeah, like it's a cool cold open. A baby is born, real baby too, which is nice, and real like young baby, not like a 6-month-old that you often
Nope.
get.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It doesn't quite look like a newborn, but it's closer than they usually get.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually a little troubled by that because the baby's on the floor, and like I know they have all sorts of things in place, but I'm just like, oh.
I'm sure that was just like a really cozy blanket with texture to make it look like a wood floor.
Gosh, I hope so. But
I think they were twins too, so they were able to rotate the babies through.
Yeah, they were, but
who's the lucky floor baby? I don't know.
they were. It was funny. They were saying one of them was a better actor than the other.
I did like when with the opener with her running through the woods. One of the things that I think this was such a good way of showing, okay, you're in an apocalypse, you can't control this. Like, if you're hurt or sick or in labor, just how horrifying and terrifying it would be. And she is absolutely desperate to get to this house, but she knows what's coming up behind her. And I thought that was portrayed really, really well, that desperation and that instinct to get somewhere, but she has no control over her labor. And so even when she's getting into the house and they show that like her water is broken, it is a really stressful scene to watch.
Oh yeah.
It's a stressful sequence to watch. And so I thought she did a fantastic job
Hell,
in
I'm
this.
super stressed out for the Fireflies having to get that newborn back to Boston.
Right.
Like, and it hasn't nursed at all. Did they show up with formula? I mean, maybe they did because they were expecting to meet up with Anna. But geez.
Yeah, agree.
I thought the scene was great. I mean, it's tense. It gives like a really plausible, in within this world explanation for why Ellie is immune, and you get that again, back to your point about them looking alike. You get that kind of maternal bonding or like linkage between um not only the characters but also the actresses as well. I don't know. It's just awesome. Make it the textual and like metatextual levels of having Ashley Johnson in that role are wonderful. I also thought it was fascinating that we see that Marlene has been involved in Ellie's life since she was a tiny baby. I don't know if that was canon before. I don't remember. But the fact that she and Ellie's mom were good friends, and that she's, kind of been orchestrating Ellie's whole life is not something that you quite have gotten so far in the series, at least.
Yeah, I think it was based on a Neil Druckmann short story that he wrote. So, as far as I understand it, it is canon, which takes you to that final. Like this is where that amazing symmetry is in this episode. This is Marlene, like setting the basis of Marlene's involvement, like you said, and she knows Ellie better, you might argue, than maybe not, because she hasn't actually been with her day to day, but she's known her definitely longer than Joel has. And so by the time you get to the end of this episode, there's some real symmetry. So is there anything else you want to talk about with this cold open and these other scenes with the Fireflies? Because then we go to the present day with Joel and Ellie.
Yeah. No, I think the only thing I was going to comment about the Marlene connection, Kyle, but also the tragedy that Anna, Ellie's mom, is having because she can't even nurse her baby, and she knows how close it is. Like she was getting ready to kill herself before Marlene and her crew showed up, and so I thought that was a great way to set the table, because it basically pulls your heartstrings both with that interaction with them and the lost opportunity and she's not able to stay around, but also with Marlene having to basically do what Anna was about to do and has known her. This is like her closest friend. And so it makes the end of the next episode hit that much harder, or sorry, the end of this episode hit that much harder. So I thought that was an excellent way to show the parallels and the symmetry, because it's almost like it's a similar decision, but a different way of looking at it.
They're clearly setting it up that Marlene can make tough choices and follow through, and not everybody apparently can.
Correct.
So on the road, Joel is like frantically trying to get Ellie to be like her old self. Well, he's like waving Chef Boyardee in front of her. He's waving Boggle in front of her. He's like, "I'll teach you to play guitar. You want to play guitar? I'll teach you guitar." And Bella Ramsey's Ella is just like, what? Oh, okay, yeah, sure. A far cry from how she was on the road. And the previously on section of this show had a lot of those clips of them walking around and her like yammering at him, and now it's the other way around. And so it's we're seeing how much she has suffered from what happened with her and David.
Yep. And yeah, I think she does a great job at showing this. And this is the part where the time passage, I would have liked to know a little bit more how much time had passed. Because I think that knowing, like seeing the level of trauma that she's still suffering, would have been like, I was going to comment on that too, Kyle, because here we see that it's a different season, obviously, and it's so you're assuming that a lot of time has passed, but she's still suffering the repercussions.
How much time do you guys think has passed? Because they've also moved, which might explain why the landscape looks a little different.
They've
Yeah,
gone from Colorado to Utah, which
but
are
Utah's
neighboring states, but it's a long way from the mountains and from Colorado. It's a long distance to get to Salt Lake
So
City.
maybe a month or two.
Yeah, on foot.
and
Yeah.
it's going into spring because it's all green and stuff. So, so I guess I would have liked to know a little bit more, like explicitly how much time had passed. But
Well,
in any case,
at least it makes sense given that amount of time and travel that Joel would be almost 100%.
yeah.
And also makes sense because trauma acts differently, right? Like, and more time doesn't necessarily make your thoughts change. In fact, they can
No, and that's why I thought it would have been helpful to
Yeah.
know a little bit that she was still suffering from this, that it isn't like, and that his efforts to sort of snap her out of it have probably been ongoing.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that I was like, that would have been nice, but all good.
Yeah. And it could also just be that she's having a bad day because he says you seem extra quiet today. Later on, when they get into Salt Lake City, and they go into that construction site, and she kind of throws a ladder at him and then runs off. This was one of the sections of the game that really did hit me. The giraffe scene is another thing that they did in the game.
It was a real giraffe.
I mean, it sure looked like one. What do you guys think? You have the CGI eyes.
It was a real giraffe.
In every scene?
It's a real giraffe fake background. So they're standing on a green screen, essentially feeding a giraffe that's standing there with him.
It was funny that they had to go up. They went up 3 flights of stairs and a ladder, and the giraffe was still just like at head height. So that building is on a weird slope, or that giraffe is actually 40 feet tall.
I was wondering about the giraffe surviving the winter. That seemed a little...
Not just one giraffe, but a whole little herd of them.
Oh, but yeah, there'd have to be more than one. But I was like, winter in Salt Lake City is also pretty brutal. It's not quite as brutal as rural Wyoming, but giraffes and snow aren't a combo I usually think of. But it is a really wonderful moment of just kind of awe,
Serenity. That's our supermarket shopping moment for the episode. And you get to see that Ellie isn't completely in her head, and she can still have a good chuckle.
Yeah.
We also have her deliver some really important dialogue here where Joel is like, we don't have to do this. Let's get out of here. And she's like, no, there's no half measures. We see this through. It's so interesting that, I mean, he is there to like facilitate her delivery. The relationship has changed a lot, but she's basically telling him how it's going to go. And he's just like, okay, boss. And so he's kind of gone back into a Tess ordering him around sort of mode. I don't know if you guys felt that at all in that scene.
I definitely felt that, but I don't know, like from the beginning when she's going to be like quote unquote studied, I always, not totally knowing what was going to happen, I kind of saw what was coming.
Well, he's clearly doesn't have any idea. When he's saying we don't have to do this, I think he's just talking about how nothing has been easy.
Right.
And the last time we went to a hospital, nobody was there, and we got mugged, and I got stabbed by a baseball bat.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think he has obviously, or that he wouldn't just be idly reading puns and walking into the next scene. So the way that the Fireflies get them is overly aggressive. The way that the Fireflies get them in the game is you've just gotten out of like a subway tunnel full of water. Ellie has drowned, and you are giving her CPR when the Fireflies come up and knock you out mid CPR. They're like, raise your hands, and he's giving her chest compressions, and then they knock Joel out. So in the game, these guys are jerks. In the show, they're still jerks because you don't have to flashbang people for no reason. They're just walking along reading jokes to each other. Like, they are almost the definition of non-threatening. So what did you guys think of the roll-up?
I just thought, well, I was a little surprised that they were able to walk up on them so easily, given that Joel just says bad things always happen, or there's always things, right? So that surprised me sort of. And I didn't think that it was, having not seen the game, I'm not, it doesn't surprise me that this is the way they decided to go, because they've got to like fit all of this into 45 minutes. So maybe the CPR thing wouldn't have been working out so well.
Yeah. By the time you get to that scene in the game, you've gone through all these tunnels and clickers and bloaters and runners. Like you've just been slaying bodies, using all those endgame, weapons that Kyle was talking about and skills. So yeah, it's just rough. He's also, just before the pun reading, revealed that he tried to kill himself the day after Sarah was killed in Texas. And this kind of informs one of his speeches that comes later, where he's like, just when you think everything has come to an end, just keep going and you'll find a reason to live again, is kind of like, I guess that's his mantra.
And he even says it even more, that she's the reason that
he but it took him 20 years to find a reason to not kill himself.
Right.
It feels like.
I have a lot of problems with the Fireflies and how they're portrayed, but I don't think this is quite the right time to rant about them. So I'm going to keep it under wraps for another couple of minutes of discussion.
Okay. All right. So they get blown up, knocked out, butt of a rifle. This is more of this, like, Fireflies are jerks, but not as jerky as in the game. Joel wakes up in the hospital. It's now 28 minutes into the episode. Marlene's there and starts to talk to him about the situation. He asks to be taken to Ellie at least 3 times before she starts to tell him that she's in surgery or getting ready for surgery. By 1 minute, or by 29 minutes and 30 seconds, he understands the situation. And like 20 seconds after that, he's already been hit in the stomach again. and he says to Marlene, I have a choice. She's like, I don't have a choice. He's like, I do. And then she's just like, okay, take him away. This is gonna go fine. Like I've played this over in my head. Like, how could Marlene have set this up so that Joel wouldn't do what he's about to do? And I feel like you get Ellie, she's compos mentis, you get the surgeon, you have like 6 armed guards, you have Joel, and we talk it out, all of us in a room, and Ellie will say, yes, do the thing, and Joel will probably still try to fight it. You probably have to kill him, but at least I don't know that there's any other way that, or you just shoot him in his sleep, or something like that.
I mean, the other thing about this is that I don't think there's any guarantee that they do find a cure for this.
That too.
Even if they do this to her, and she dies, like, we don't exactly have the medical technology, or at least there's nothing that they've shared, and nothing that I have seen shows me that they actually have this. This is a guess. They don't fully understand why this is a guess about why Ellie is immune, and there is no guarantee that they can actually make this happen for everybody, which, I definitely think Joel is going, through the whole spectrum of emotions about this, but I don't think that there is actually any guarantee for the cure for mankind. And I think if there's the risk of that, Joel is gonna, and that's a little bit of what he says to her when he's like lying to her and saying there's other people who are immune and they couldn't do it and whatever. I think he truly believes that. But I also think that he can't bear to let Ellie die. And I think that was a really interesting way of showing that. I don't think that there would ever be any way that Joel would be okay with Ellie making the sacrifice, though, no matter what, even if she said it.
So I think we've arrived at the time for my rant.
Go rant. Go rant.
Because I don't fundamentally believe that this is a successful ending. And I didn't like it in the game particularly, and I don't like it here even more so. And the reason is because you can see what the creators or the writers are attempting to do, which is set up this genuine moral quandary, their version of the trolley problem, where on the one hand you have saving Ellie and Ellie's life, and on the other hand you have saving essentially all of humanity. And they want you to take it on faith that the Firefly plan is solid, that they have the technology, that their surgeon knows what he's doing, that all of this stuff is just going to fundamentally work. But they have not laid the groundwork for that with the Fireflies as an organization throughout this entire show, going all the way back to the very first episodes. They're portrayed as being weak, ineffective, more of a nuisance to Fedra than anything else, prone to petty squabbling and infighting. We don't have any sense that they're a competent organization who can actually accomplish anything of any substance. Marlene and most of her followers lost a huge number of people coming from Boston to the west. Um, and and this is again a place where I think the show is just rushing too much. Like it absolutely breaks credulity that they would get this person, and the first thing they would do with their only immune person that they've ever found is immediately kill them. But it just does not make any sense, and it puts you firmly in Joel's camp immediately. Like there is no moral quandary because any reasonable person presented with the Firefly's behavior would do exactly what Joel did. So
Yep.
they're tipping their hand in terms of how they want this, moral action to be perceived by the audience. I can think of lots of ways that they could have fixed this if they wanted to. I mean, how about Joel and Ellie spend a while there? They run a bunch of tests. They take a bunch of blood. They take some biopsies of her brain. She grows progressively weaker and it tears at Joel's heart. And then one day he finds out that she's going into this surgery and it's expected to kill her. But you've already seen the Firefly's kind of medical apparatus at work, and you've seen that they've been trying to synthesize a cure, but they just need something from inside the brain that they can't get. That's a reasonable thing to do. It wouldn't have taken that much screen time. But the way that they are hustling her into surgery within like 40 minutes, like how long does it take Joel to wake up from being clobbered in the head? Like it's so swift that it just absolutely breaks the entire situation that they're maneuvering the chess pieces to try and establish. So I don't know, the whole foundation of this moral game that they're trying to play has never worked for me because I don't think that the game does enough or the show does enough to set it up in advance. And so anybody would do what Joel did because the Fireflies have not proven themselves to be a competent organization at any level or altruistic or any other things that you would need.
That is not a bad argument. I don't think that the game ever backs up the fact that it couldn't, like, you're right. The story assumes the Fireflies were going to be successful. And I think that is a consistent assumption for the rest of the narrative into the second game and that its narrative too at this point. So in a way, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief and just go with the fact that if they had done this, it would have worked. Like, because that is the assumption that they want you to operate under. And in the podcast, Neil Druckmann talks about a survey they did from Naughty Dog with the game, talking about like, what did you think of the end, and what, do you agree with Joel's choice, or would you have done the thing the Fireflies wanted to do? And he said it was pretty close to 50%, except if it was a parent, and then it was like, I don't know, some much higher number of people would have done what Joel did.
Well,
I've heard that as well, but this has bothered me since before I became a parent. So
well, I also think that there's, having not seen the game, I agree totally with you, Kyle, because this is all I could think was like, there's no proof that they actually know that this is going to be successful. And they have set everything up about the Fireflies to sort of show that they are not really trustworthy and they may not have this technology. I mean, otherwise, why would they need Joel to get her out there, right? Like even the drop where she was supposed to meet up with them went wrong, and so that's why Joel was sort of forced to take her from Boston. And the other thing that I really, but aside from that, the other thing I really didn't like in this is the fact that Marlene comes and tells Joel, oh, she's already prepped for surgery, and we didn't even tell her that that's what we were doing. And to me, that's like taking away Ellie's like choice and autonomy and everything that they've built about this character. To me, that was one of the most upsetting things, because everybody's like, oh, we know what choice Ellie would made. Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but how about you show her making it?
But this is another way that the writers are essentially stacking the deck in Joel's favor. Because let's rewind the tape a little bit and say that the Fireflies had told Ellie, hey, we think this is the only way to get this and it's going to kill you. And Ellie said, I want to do it anyway. And then Joel does what he does. that is actually a much stronger betrayal of Ellie than what happens. The Fireflies not telling Ellie actually, again, it just stacks the deck in favor of Joel. You can see how the writers want you to come down in terms of this ethical quandary, because they keep arranging the pieces and manipulating the
but
events
then even if you hear Neil Druckmann and Greg Mason talking about it, they don't seem to think that they stack the decks, but stack the odds. And
I just disagree.
I mean, I also think that, Pedro Pascal is so likable, they can't make him like the villain. So, there you go. They're not gonna put him into this negative space, I suppose.
I mean, he's there. He's definitely I don't, maybe that was just, he's definitely the villain. Like, he's the villain for me. And I know that there's a lot of people who go the other direction. I'm with Fireflies. I'm with Marlene. I'm like, make the harder choice, because I accept the fact that they have the best doctor in the freaking universe, maybe the last one.
That Joel puts a bullet through his head. And that was the other thing that I was like, just the fact that he does it without even thinking.
Yeah, the stupid guy picked up a scalpel. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, Joel kills 13 people over the next several minutes of television. He does it to like a muffled, slow-mo-ish music is in the foreground of your audio experience. He's shooting people who have laid down their weapons. I think a couple people might get away, but he shoots, you see 12 dead bodies plus the surgeon. And then when he's in pediatrics, that's where Laura Bailey plays a major character in the sequel to the game. I'm sure that character will come back in season 2. I assume. Yeah, no, because there's 3 seasons, I think, for this show planned. Laura Bailey will not play that character because that character has a certain physicality, but Laura Bailey was her voice, and she's one of the nurses. So there was a cool cameo here. Also, Laura Bailey and Ashley Johnson both play Dungeons and Dragons in this actual play that I've talked about on this podcast before called Critical Role, and it's really cool to see them on TV, not just on YouTube. That being said, he's just like unhook her and takes Ellie away. Ellie is super passed out. They get to the basement, to the parking garage, and that's where Marlene has decided to make her pitch. I do think Marlene miscalculates severely here. She tries to use reason instead of just shooting him in the face. I would have shot him in the face.
I would have shot him before he woke up. Like,
yeah. Well, okay. Saying you didn't manage to shoot him before he woke up because you were filled with what is the emotion? It's like sympathy. It's kind of sympathy. It's like, oh, the poor guy. He came all the way across the country. He brought us.
It's like obligation, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's obligation because until he wakes up, she still thinks he's the old Joel.
I owe you. I never wanted to owe you. Now I owe you. She's feeling feelings toward him, but that quickly turns into take him out, and if he tries anything, shoot him, like within 2-3 minutes. But by the time she gets to the parking garage, she should know the score. She has heard the gunshots. She knows that he's been murdering people. His face is very exposed. Ellie is not like covering his face. She has a gun. She puts it down, and he's able to shoot her. Well, actually, you don't see that right away, and that's kind of an interesting way that they frame this last couple scenes. They go from her saying, I think that Ellie would want to do the right thing, and he does have a look on his face that's like, gosh, I think she would probably vote to sacrifice her body to science. And then you cuts to the car. I thought that was I don't remember it going that way in the game, so I thought that was quite smart, even if you don't really believe that he's gonna murder 13 people and then be like, oh, my bad, you're right. But then it turns out he had just kind of shot her from under Ellie's legs, puts her in the car, and then goes back and does the coup de grace, which happens in the game with that exact line of dialogue too. And it just seals his fate in my mind. Like, he's the baddie.
I don't disagree with Joel's decision to go get Ellie and kill the fireflies. I think the fireflies were pretty much worthless. But where Joel does really cross a moral line is in lying to Ellie about what
Yeah.
happened and making up an entirely false story and kind of taking away her sense of purpose. That's where the moral transgression is not in the hospital, but in the car after.
My God.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
murder of 13 people was not immoral. It was the not being honest about it.
I mean, we've seen a lot of people get murdered on this show. None of the side folks have ever caused us any serious trauma before. These guys are making bombs and blowing up. They almost killed Tess in the first episode. These are not good dudes.
They might be. They might. The Salt Lake City guys might be the best dudes. um. So yeah, she wakes up. She's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Don't worry about it." Then yes, on the hillside above Jackson, he is talking about how Sarah would have liked you. He's gone completely, 180. Now it's like, let's talk about all the things that used to pain me because now I don't feel pain. Um, and you can see on again with this Bella Ramsey acting school, her face is extremely. It's not like yeah, it is expressive, but in this case, she's just deep in thought, and the camera often lingers on her face while Joel is talking, and you can just see how conflicted she is. Um, and then the final swear to me, everything you said about the Fireflies is true. I swear. Her face some more, and then okay, and then cut to credits. Any impressions on this, H.A. Conrad?
I mean, I think that there, even leading up to this particular exchange, he specifically is talking about his daughter and, how, he's saying it but not saying it, that's how he feels about Ellie, even though she's a very different person from his daughter. And like that is deliberate. And so when they have this moment overlooking this beautiful landscape and they do a callback to, her whole view, that view comment, or it's implied anyway. I think it's pretty clear she knows he's not telling the truth, but she's going to uh, just believe him, or at least try to believe him, or pretend she believes him, or just gives into it because she cares about him too. And again, this is a conflicted thing because it's going to come back later, obviously, in the sequels, and this is the point where, and it's uncomfortable. It's not like, I think Kyle's right that this is the moral line, because this will be impacting everything going forward from here. um and so I didn't dislike it completely, and I'm not surprised that this is how they ended it in this moment. But having not, I didn't play the game, so I'm not, invested like probably some people, but it seems like people were conflicted about the end of the game too. So I don't know that you could have necessarily done this any better. But I don't know. Kyle, what do you think?
I like the way that I like specifically the last shot and the fact that you get this very ambiguous okay, and then just the direct cut to black. It's sad and ominous,
Mm-hmm.
and um, I think it's a nice way to close out. It's very similar to how the game closed as well, and I think that was good. After all my complaining, I think this part was good.
So we have talked a lot about the decisions being made by Marlene and by Joel on Ellie's behalf in this. I'm probably a little late to make this point, but I wanted to recall back to Jackson when Joel delivers a line to Ellie, a line that's not in the game, where he's like, "Look, Tommy's going to go with you, or I can go with you. You deserve a choice." A sentence that he doesn't say to her like any other time ever. And so to me, when I heard them use that line in the show, it just, I think I had just played through this section of the game, and it just punched me in the stomach to hear him say to her those words and then to clearly not mean it. Like it was not something that he does. It's not something that he actually thinks is important for her, as long as he gets what he wants. And obviously the same is true for Marlene. And that is to me, yeah. I guess that's what you get. One of the things you guys are saying is the moral line, not just the lying, but the removing agency.
I don't necessarily buy Marlene's argument that Ellie would have agreed if she'd been asked. I think if that's the case, then they would have asked.
Correct.
I mean, Ellie has, as we saw just in the last episode, an insanely strong survival instinct. So I don't necessarily get that read from the character as presented so far that she would absolutely just let them, cut into her brain and kill her.
But so she had said to Joel, like, this all has to mean something. There's no half measure.
Yeah,
so
but
that does kind of lean in
that
direction. No,
at that time she doesn't know that she's gonna die. Like
those are just strong words. Those are powerful words to say, and to put those words 10 minutes of script before this thing happens. Yeah, I think it does lend a little bit of a question mark. I'm clearly in the kill the child, save the world camp. You guys are save the girl, kill the world. Neither of us are right. All of us are wrong.
I'm not necessarily in the save the girl, kill the world thing. I just don't think that they have shown that her sacrifice would save the world, and I'm in agreement with Kyle on that. And I think that they have set it up in that way deliberately, because then Joel's decision isn't quite as horrible, and people sympathize with him.
I think that's rationalizing.
No, I mean,
I think that makes Joel's decision less disgusting, but I can't get there.
Right. I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, AJ.
Oh no, you go.
Hear me. My complaints are about the puppet strings. You can see the puppet strings, and that's like the delicate dance of creating any sort of narrative art, is that you are always in control, but you never want the audience to feel as though they're being manipulated. And I felt manipulated in a way that was not earned throughout this entire ending sequence. So I'm not really making a moral argument one way or the other about the specific of the quandary that they faced. I just thought it was clunky way that they set that argument up.
What if the mycologist from Jakarta was in the surgery room too, along with the surgeon? Would you have been like, oh, now this could work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, definitely a much stronger argument than this guy that we've never seen before, whose only qualifications is Marlene's like, he's our best doctor. Like,
right.
Who the hell are you guys?
Who the hell are you
guys? For all we know, he's a podiatrist. We have no idea.
Feet, brains, all similar.
So I guess my thing is that the choice question, and this is for all of them, like, look, Ellie has had to make hard choices. She shared with Joel that the first person she killed was her friend and her girlfriend. And so the fact that these adults know it too, like the fact that they're taking this choice away from her is to me the weirdest thing that they do, and without having her present in the conversation. And again, I agree with Kyle. I think that's deliberate, and it's like kind of, it's manipulative, but on the other hand, that's how we have the tension for the next season. I do think that there's a way they could have done it a little bit better, but I don't know that the result would have been any different. So I'm not surprised that they ended it in this way, because they need to have fodder for the next couple of seasons, and that's not going to work if they just have Ellie sacrifice herself for humanity.
No, not quite. But all right, so I am happy with the end of this show. Not happy with the way everything went, obviously, but it's I'm very excited for the next season. Now that I've played through all of the next game, because I have no self-control. Very excited for the next season. Kyle, have you played the second part?
I own it, and I must have started it at some point, because I have some memories of Jackson, and it's installed on my PS4, but I have not completed it. So I don't know how far I got, and I don't think it was very far. I think I just started it and did the first couple of hours and then stopped. Yeah, so I'll probably have to pick it up again before season 2.
Back to your comments when we were in Jackson about how similar it looked to the game. you're right, man. They really recreated it. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know when that's going to come out. I don't even know if it's in pre-production or anything yet. What's kind of interesting is that Ellie is 14 in this game and 18 in the next game. She gets a lot taller. Bella Ramsey is 19 and she's about as tall as she's going to get. So I don't know if they're going to use some forced perspective but yeah, Ellie matures quite a bit. She goes from kid to young adult between part 1 and part 2. So I'll be interesting to see how they're going to approach that.
One thing that's kind of shocking is if you go back and watch the first scene of the first episode, you're like, and I guess not the first scene, but the Texas scenes with Joel, he looks a lot younger. I didn't really realize what a good job they'd done aging him up with the makeup and everything until I went back and watched some clips from that first episode, and I was like, wow, he looks a lot different here. So I'm sure they'll find some way to age Bella Ramsey up.
Yeah.
Cool.
I am also very excited for season 2. The main thing that I want from it is something that they started to do in this season, but then completely dropped. And so I hope that they kind of get back to this a little bit. There were a lot of hints in the first 2 episodes, especially about some cool things about the way the zombies function that never came back again. Like all that stuff about how they put out the mycelium and you step on it a mile away and a clicker wakes up or whatever. Like that stuff never reappeared.
We also didn't see enough zombies for that to actually happen.
Not enough zombies is definitely a bummer. I feel like the show kind of lost interest in the zombies as time went on, but there were a lot of things about the way that the cordyceps worked and the mycelium and all of the little tendril networks and maybe even some sort of like shared consciousness and all that scene with them all screaming when the sun hits them and all that kind of stuff that never really came back up. So
now I'm really
to see them do that stuff.
Now I'm really hoping to have a scene where they're grinding up cordyceps into coffee and they're all feeling around.
That's the key to the immunity.
Network.
Just caffeinate.
Yeah.
It's for their inflammation. Well, great stuff, you guys. Kyle, I'm sorry that our special guest status might have to go on hiatus, but if we come up with something else that you want to talk about, the door's always open.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely tons of fun having you on this. Always love to hear your thoughts, which are usually a lot deeper than mine.
so deep. We don't know. Well, I guess we're going to probably have to take another week off. But when we come back, we will be talking about something brand new, fresh and hot, or old and classic. I'm not sure really where we are going to land. We haven't.
Could go either way. Could go either way.
So get back with us. You can reach us now. Let us know which trolley would you have gotten. I don't know what the trolley problem is, but I've heard it dropped a lot of times in reference to this ending. But we don't need to go into it now. But would you have gotten on the trolley or gotten off of the trolley? Let us know. Email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at reanimatedpcast. And you can find all of our episodes at reanimated.podbean.com. And Joel's a murderer.
And on that note, ciao. Thanks for listening.
See you later.
All right. Good times. Bye, everybody.